1952 suddenly grew up to be a papa-san right fast. I was successful in getting out of the service in 1946, married Olga Cottony, and in 1951 somebody kicked the filing cabinet and my name fell out, and they called me back in the service. I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and was assigned to a searchlight unit to reactivate one there and then go to Korea to take over one already in active duty there. En route to Korea, they changed my orders and I went to the 809th Aviation Engineer Battalion instead. Then I didn't know what a searchlight unit was. And you say you flick your Bic today, but I didn't know how to flick that unit over there. And I was glad that they transferred me into the aviation engineer. Now this is when I first got there in June of 1952. And I started growing a mustache, as you can see, that did reach 14.5 inches before I got home in March of 1953. Lieutenant Meeker was my executive officer, one of the finest officers I ever knew in front of our order room. We did have to have some assistance, and we got it from the Air Force since I was working for the Air Force there. And this is a station that they had at Busan, Korea, and I was doing the work down there, and I was able to get transportation by the base operations officer if I do certain works for them, which we did in my unit. That is typical of the airfield down in Korea. It was on a Marine base at Busan. We had to pour concrete in freezing weather, and the only way we could do it was to cover it, as you can see, with straw, hoping to keep it from freezing. It was a rather difficult job to do. These are the typical tents that my men had to live in, and we used for all of our storage area also. Then in March of 1953, we thought our third son, Chris, was going to die at about 9 months old, because we had lost our first son, Keith, with cancer. So the Red Cross actually got me transferred back in March, and I refer to this as the Red Cross deportation log. It was so muddy you couldn't even walk across the street, so the men pitched a log down there so they could haul my baggage off that way. Excuse me. This is another shot of our supply depot. It was about the only thing in the world that we had, and they had to cover it up with canvas to keep it going. And that's the way they repaired the airplane. They couldn't get a hangar big enough, so they just built a little shed and stuck it in. Pilots, again, taking us wherever we needed to go. That happens to be in the Air Force barracks in Japan, where I was lucky enough to be able to fly over and pick up stuff, and that's one of the places there. A good shot of the runways again. Big repair job going on here. We're looking at Korea from the air. There's the big cargo planes that hauled everything for us. That's another shot of the order room, except we got two of my officers there now. And these are the people that would fly me around wherever I needed to go. And it's funny, but Eddie Rickenbacker Jr., a second lieutenant, actually was my, shall we say, cab driver by air. He flew me most anywhere I needed and wanted to go whenever. More runways we're having to do. Other officers. Another barracks in Japan. They even grew oranges there, as you can see. city streets in Japan then weren't all quite that crowded. Japanese pagoda, control tower on the airbase, more barracks in Japan. Tokyo Base Exchange, it wasn't very big, was it? Been back to K6, we're still pouring runways. That was my first Sergeant Bryant in Korea. More runways. Then we jumped to Newfoundland because they sent me up there from Korea after I was successful in rotating in March. We were blasting bog on the Hanson Memorial Highway from Stephenville to Stephenville Crossing. And we were having to drain the water. It was nothing but bog, anywhere from 18 inches to 18 feet deep, and it was difficult to get the water to run off. Now, if you don't think that one was stuck, you ought to just try to remember how much effort it took to pull that thing out. It took 6 cats and an air compressor before we could get it out. More work on that road. Corduroy roads to get our equipment across. Excuse me. Blasting rock. Starting into a bog area, we soon learned, instead of trying to remove it, just pile dirt on it and push it out. And just keep pushing. That's a 50-ton rock crusher we had to carry wherever we wanted to go. It was one of our table of basic equipment pieces we had ourselves. This is the side of a 150-ton rock crusher that we used down by Noel's Pond. We're heading toward what they call Cold Duck Creek, trying to get a culvert in, as you see there. The road now, we have done some pretty well finishing of it. About sometime in 1955 was when this picture was taken. And another shot of Noel's Pond where the 150-ton rock crusher was. Again, about 1955. That was when I had gone into the 347th Engineer Aviation Battalion from Orlando, Florida. In June of 1953, we went up there. We also built the base salvage yard. That's the entrance to it. And again, we were getting awfully lot of vehicles stuck, as you can see. It was a mess. The most expensive real estate that the United States Army, I think, ever had anywhere was 37 acres in the entire area, but it was millions of dollars per acre in cost. Then we just filled up some of the holes after we